Ah, capisco, ok.
Va bene. Adesso noi vediamo il... 15 minuti a 13
Sì.
ma sono Laurea di Francesco.
Esatto.
Adesso può continuare.
Volevo sapere. Good morning, everyone. Today I'm going to present my thesis work titled The Role of Circular Economy Practice Enabled by Digital Technologies in Enhancing Firm Performance, an empirical study from an operational perspective. Here there is a brief overview of today's presentation. I'll begin with an introduction to move then to materials and methods, followed by resultant discussion, and finally wrap up with conclusion. Let's start with the introduction. Circular economy, through the adoption of circular economy practices, is seen as an effective strategy for addressing sustainability challenges while improving firm performance. However, in manufacturing industry, the adoption remains limited. At the same time, digitalization, through the adoption of digital technologies, can support the transition towards circularity. Yet, there is lack of practical guidance on how effectively leverage on digital technologies towards circularity. There is the need to make the discussion more concrete and operational. The present study offers an empirical analysis on European manufacturing firms exploring the relationship between digital technologies and circular economy practices, the barriers hindering their adoption, their impact on performance, while considering the context in which the firms operate. Materials and methods. A literature review was conducted in order to shed light on the key aspects related to circular economy practices, digital technologies, and their relationship. And in this slide, you can see a brief summary. On the circular side, it covers the adoption level, adoption barrier, impact on performance, and circular maturity level. Whereas on the digital side, it focused on digital adoption level, adoption barrier, and digital maturity level. The review highlights that there is a general lack of empirical evidence, few holistic and integrated analysis, and limited consideration on contextual factors. From the literature gaps, it is possible to identify 4 research questions. First research question: which are the most impacted circular economy practices, the barriers hindering their adoption, and the circular maturity level of manufacturing firms? Second research question: which performance area are generated or impacted by specific practices, and what is the overall effect of all the practices on global sustainability performance? Third one: which are the most adopted digital technologies, the barriers hindering their adoption, and the digital maturity level of manufacturing firms? Last research question: does the technologies adoption enhance the practice adoption, and which technologies lead to better performance through the application of such practices? To address the research question, a conceptual framework was developed. It examines the problem from 2 angles: the practice level perspective, in which the single technologies and the single practices are analyzed, with their related adoption barriers and the impact on the single performance. Furthermore, the concurrent adoption of technologies and practice is analyzed to uncover possible synergies towards performance. Then, the firm level perspective, in which the overall impact of the full set of technologies and practices adopted by the firm is considered, and their impact on the global performance. The full analysis considers also the context in which the firm operates, such as size, country, and sector. The empirical analysis has been conducted through a survey methodology, and a questionnaire has been developed. The questionnaire is composed by 4 sections: introduction, circular economy practices, digital technologies, and general information about the firm. Each question was designed through an in-depth literature review. And here, in this slide, you can see some example questions from the section dedicated to the circular economy practices. For each practice, the respondents indicate the adoption level following a scale, then the 3 most impacting barrier categories, and we provide some example of the most common barriers. Similarly, for the performance, for each practice, the respondents indicates how the performance area, with some KPIs as example, are modified after the adoption of the practice. Then, on the right, there are 3 questions dedicated to the global impact on performance from the perspective of the 3 pillars of sustainability, hence economic performance, environmental performance, and social performance. Then the following section is dedicated to the digital technologies, and the question about the adoption level and the adoption barrier is asked with the same structure. The questionnaire is targeting medium and large enterprises operating in Germany and Italy in the manufacturing sector. The total sample is composed by 519 manufacturing firms, and in this slide you can see the sample breakdown by contextual factors: size, country, and sector. Let's move on results and discussion. First research question is about the circular economy practices. In this slide, we analyze the adoption level. For each practice, we compute the average adoption level. And from the table, you can see that the most adopted practices belong to recycle, reduce, and rethink strategies, which can be classified as internal practices, which are easier to be adopted and with a faster return on investment. Second part of the question is about the adoption barrier. And for each practice, in this table, you can see the ranking of the most impacting barriers, split also for the different stages of adoption. And from the table, you can see that the most cited barriers by respondent as the most impacting are technological, regulatory, and economic. One aspect to be highlighted is that for the successful implementation adoption stage, the economic barrier gains relevance with respect to the total sample. Then, last part of the first question is about the circular maturity level that has been assessed through a custom index developed by us. And the average circular maturity level is 2.31 out of 5, with a large variability, outlining an heterogeneous state of circularity among firms. Second research question is about the impact on performance. And here, in this table, you can see for all the practices, the average impact on performance computed for the main performance areas. Also, in this case, we consider the different stages of adoption. So, failed adoption, successful adoption, and adoption in progress. 2 points to be highlighted. In the successful implementation, the overall impact is greater. And the performance areas like incomes and costs related to the economic pillars of sustainability gains relevance. Whereas for the total sample, the most impacted performance are output waste and product and production that are related to the environmental pillar. The second aspect is that German firms show a greater impact on performance with respect to Italian firms. Then, to assess the global impact on performance, we selected the virtuous firms, those firms that shows in the questionnaire at least one global performance improved. And we recompute again the table. As you can see, the impact is much greater. And also, the economic performance are more relevant. The third research question is about the digital technologies, and it follows the same structure of the first research question. So, in this slide, you can see computed for each technologies the average adoption level. And from the table, the most adopted digital technologies belong to the computer-based technology and cloud computing family, which are considered base technologies that paves the way for more advanced solutions called front-end technologies. Adoption barrier, same structure as before, and from the table you can see that the most cited adoption barrier by respondent are technological and cybersecurity. Last part of the third question is about the digital maturity level. Also in this case, we create a custom index, and the average digital maturity level is 2.35 out of 5. Also in this case, with a large variability. So the digitalization across firms is uneven. Last research question is about the relationship between digital technologies and circular economy practices. In this case, for each technologies and each practice, we compute the correlation coefficient between the adoption level. And from the table, the correlation coefficient assumes values below 0.5. So this suggests that firms are still in an exploratory phase, seeking ways to exploit digitalization towards circularity. In this case, German firms show fewer but stronger links. At firm level, we compute the correlation coefficient between the digital and the circular maturity levels, and we found a strong linear relationship between the digitalization and circularity at firm level. So, what we can learn about this study? First is that the correlation between digitalization and circularity is strong at firm level, whereas this link is weaker at the practice level. This suggests, as I told before, that firms are still exploring how to exploit digitalization towards circularity. Second aspect is that German firms show fewer but stronger link between digitalization and circularity, and this suggests that they are following a more structured approach, and this is also supported by a greater impact on performance. Last aspect is that often firms start their circular journey for environmental purposes, but this study shows that the benefits are also economic and they are relevant. The limitations of this study are also linked with future research streams. First aspect is that the sample is limited to medium and large enterprises and 2 countries, and in future it could be enlarged. Second aspect is that we consider the co-presence between digital technologies, practices, and performance with a causal relationship. But this link in future should be explored more in depth. Then, last aspect is that in the equipresence analysis, we consider couples of technologies and practices. But in future, with more advanced statistical tools, it could be enlarged to a set of technologies and practices. Thank you for the attention.
We have here your discussants. Well, you need some comments. So they say that it is taking a high relevant topic. This is true from both academic and practitioner point of view. The work is well rounded, both from point of view of the research review and it gives out some takeouts that are really interesting from the practical point of view. Also, looking from the perspective of the policymakers. This is what don't express any further questions, so I ask if the Commission have any.
Just a general question because it's not my business.
Sì.
But inside your analysis, you analyze manufacturing industries, but do you analyze in detail some kind of industries that you working instead of?
Yeah.
So you have an idea about this huge group.
Allora, yes. We group the manufacturing sectors into macro sectors to be able to have sample large enough. So, metalworking, food and beverage, textile and apparel, chemical and pharma, and wood and furniture. And okay. And from this sample, we get that the circular maturity level of metalworking and textile and apparel is similar, whereas the average circular maturity level of food and beverage and chemical and pharma is similar. And this difference between these two groups is statistically significant. Whereas for digitalization, we have some differences, but they are not statistically significant. So further studies would explore more in depth this aspect.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Grazie.